How's it going, YouTubers? Bringing you guys another Digimon pre-BT8 video. We're not worried about BT7 anymore. We're doing some prep for the BT8 format and going over a few things that I think are important to know before you get into the BT8 format. This video in particular is going to go over Erratas, certain cards that are Erratas, and I'm also going to go over what an Errata means and how the Digimon card game does its precedence and why some Erratas are necessary. But before we do that, I want to say thank you guys for all the continued support. If you are enjoying the content and you're new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and then ding that notification bell so that you know when I'm putting out some content. And then also leave a comment down below if you have any other questions about some of these cards, or if you know any other errata cards that may be important to go over for the Digimon card game that haven't been listed on the official Digimon website. But without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and hop into the video. Alright everyone, so the first errata card that I have to mention to you guys today is going to be Orumon. This is a very fan favorite card because the BT8 X Antibody deck is going to be a very strong deck, and a lot of people were waiting for the support ever since the cards got introduced and got more support in BT7. Now, what you may want to know with this card isn't the Wind Evolution effect, is not the inheritable. Both of those function perfectly correct. What is supposed to be errated here is the your turn once per turn effect. As it currently states on the card, it reads when one of your effects, should be up on the screen, one of your effects places a Digivolution card under this Digimon gets plus 2k and can't be deleted by your opponent's effects until the end of your opponent's next turn. How the card is supposed to be translated, though, changes how this works, in my opinion, in a very significant way. Your turn once per turn, when one of your effects places a Digivolution card under one of your Digimon, you get the plus 2k in the protection. This is very important because you could have multiple Digimon on the field and decide to add a source to another Digimon that, say, attacks using the effect of Yuji, and then give the Orumon protection. This would keep it from being deleted by, say, a Gaia Force. Let's swing with a smaller body, add a source via Yuji, gain the protection because a source was added to one of your other Digimon, so now your Orumon can't be targeted by, say, a Gaia Force out of security, or something along those lines, and you don't have to worry about the Orumon being deleted. In that situation, that is how this could very much affect how the board state plays out. If this isn't done properly, then you could have a board state where the Orumon gets deleted when it shouldn't have, and this swings the advantage to your opponent, and it causes issues down the line. This is going to be something that I really hope gets addressed. It was noticed very early on whenever the English cards were released, and I hope it does get errated soon so that you won't have to worry about reading and knowing your ruling as opposed to just reading the card. If you do ever have a question, like let's say you try to do it this way and your opponent says, that's not what the card reads, don't be afraid to call a judge and let them know Japanese text takes precedence. This is how the card is supposed to work in Japanese, and that is how it will be played and ruled. The next few cards I'm going to go over all involve the adjustment to their optional effects and mandatory effects. So I'm going to kind of just throw them all into the same section. The first one is going to be a fan favorite. It's going to be Blackboard Greymon. This is the new Blackboard Greymon, the black and red one. The Wind Digivolving effect works perfectly fine. It is translated properly. It functions properly. What's not correct is its all turns effect. All turns once per turn when an opponent's Digimon is deleted, unsuspend this Digimon. What the card is supposed to read, though, is all turns once per turn. When an opponent's Digimon is deleted, you may unsuspend this Digimon. Now, most of the time, if you're thinking on your turn, you might as well unsuspend it. But what if you're trying to play around something like a Trump Sword or something like that from BT1 that deletes an unsuspended Digimon? You could also have a situation where it is suspended on your side of the field and your opponent can't swing over it, but they could maybe crash their rookie into your guy, delete their own Digimon. This would trigger Blackboard Greymon and force him to unsuspend and then be able to use Trump Sword. But since it's an optional effect, you wouldn't have to do this. Since it would say you may unsuspend this Digimon, that really changes how that play would work out. They would not be able to use Trump Sword. They'd have to have some other option to deal with your Blackboard Greymon. So this is an important thing just for certain scenarios. Most of the time it's not going to come up a lot, but there are scenarios where this being a mandatory or an optional effect over a mandatory effect could adjust the outcome of a game state. Another optional card. Now these next two are going to be gonna kind of go over both, and they're gonna be the same similar scenario on why it's important. The first one to mention is gonna be another popular card for Digimon players, Flame Hell Scythe. This is an option card that says one of your opponent's Digimon gets minus 6k for the turn. That part is perfectly fine. The incorrect part, on the other hand, is then play one purple or yellow Digimon card with 6000 DP or less from the trash without paying its memory cost. What's wrong about that? It's play one purple or yellow card. The way it's read currently, it is a mandatory effect to play the purple or yellow Digimon card from the trash. When in actuality, it's supposed to be an optional effect. Sushi, why would you not want to play out a body? That seems like you would always gain advantage from that. What if you don't have a good target and your opponent has something like a Sora and Joe on their side of the field? Maybe you don't want to give them that extra memory, so you decide, since you don't have a good target that's worth giving them the extra memory, you decide not to play something so that they don't gain the extra memory via the effect of Flame Hell Scythe playing out a Digimon. What if they gain advantage of, let's say you hit this card out of security, they're swinging with the Azulongmon, you only have 2 checks left, this is your last check, maybe they have an Azulongmon and another body on field. They swing in, this is the second to last check, it reveals this, you give -6 to the Azulongmon and then are forced to play out a body, then the Azulongmon does another check and then they swing in with the last Digimon for game that they have, or maybe a hybrid for game, something along those lines. That's where this card coming up, forcing you to play a Digimon, would be very detrimental and it could cost you the game. So know that as an optional effect, you do not have to do this effect. The same can be said about our next card. This is going to be Armor Texture. We're not worried about the main effect. We're worried about the security effect in particular, which is along the same lines as Flame Hell Scythe. Play one level 3 Digimon card with free from its traits from your hand or trash without paying its memory cost. When it's supposed to say you may play one level 3 Digimon card with free in its traits. This same scenario. What if there's a Sora Joe? What if there's an Azulongmon? This comes out of security and you don't want to lose the game because it would give the Azulongmon that extra check. So very important to just know that these are optional effects. You don't have to play them. Most of the time, you're just going to play the card and it's not going to be an issue. But some of the times, certain situations, you may not want to play the card because it could end up costing you the game or affecting the game state negatively for you somehow. And last, but certainly not least, is Yukio Oikawa. I say certainly not least, but let's be honest, not a whole lot of people are going to play Melee Myotismon, but that's my own personal opinion for another day. What this card is needs an errata for, it has nothing to do with its all turns effect. It has to do with its end of opponent's turn effect. Now, what it states currently on the card that I'm going to list here is if this tamer, is suspended, you may delete this tamer to play one Melee Myotismon from your trash without paying its memory cost. This is basically a single optional effect where it's a may delete him to then mandatorily play the Melee Myotismon, or you could just not, or you could consider it the other way. But it's supposed to read end of your opponent's turn. If this tamer is suspended, by deleting this tamer, you may play the Melee Myotismon. Double optional, if you will. You would have to delete the tamer, and then you could potentially play the Melee Myotismon if you chose to, instead of it being like mandatorily play the Melee Myotismon. Most of the time, this is a smaller errata in my opinion. There's not a whole lot of situations where you would, if you're gonna do the combo with Yukio to just play out the Melee Myotismon, that you wouldn't go ahead and do it. Because it's an end of opponent's turn thing, you wouldn't have to worry about swinging in with your with the effect of an Azulongmon maybe killing you out of security like I did in the previous ones. But maybe if there's some reason why at the end of your opponent's turn you don't want to have the Melee Myotismon out to do something, that is possible as well. So it's still at an errata that I felt was important to go up, and it was the last one of the optional versus mandatory effects that I had to go over. Now, the next two examples I'm going to go over are going to be in older cards, so they may not be as relevant now, but they could be relevant in the future. Case in point, Dark Knightmon. This is a card I've mentioned in a previous video that has had an errata that definitely needs to be addressed because it really affects the timing on how this card works. Especially now that we have some BT10 support, people may be brainstorming about how to fit Dark Knightmon into some of the new Dark Knightmon and Bagra Army support or the Twilight support in BT10. But all that being said, I digress. What the card states that we're worried about here on its errata on the incorrectly translated part is not the on play, that is perfectly fine, it's the all turns effect. All turns with this Digimon is deleted. That's the key problem. I'm going to finish reading the effect and I'll go over what it's supposed to be. You may play one Skull Knightmon or Deadly Axemon from this Digimon's Digivolution cards suspended without paying their memory cost. Now, the way it's worded currently makes it seem like it is a on-deletion effect, more or less. Kind of like how the effect of Analog Boy, which is going to be used in this example, is an all-turns effect, and it's basically the same timing as on-deletion. The way this card is supposed to be worded is when this Digimon would be deleted, you may play the two Digimon and play them in suspended without paying their memory cost. The reason why this is important and specifically involves the Analog Boy is, let's say the Dark Knightmon only has the Skull Knightmon or the Deadly Axemon in its sources, and you decide their opponent goes in, deletes the Dark Knightmon. You then play out the two sources. If it was timed as a on-deletion effect, as the card states in English, when this Digimon is deleted, then both it and the Analog Boy would trigger at the same time. You could choose to activate Analog Boy first, and then you choose to activate Dark Knightmon. Because if you activate Dark Knightmon first, Analog Boy would not be able to trigger properly if you played out all of its sources. Or, yeah, trigger, and resolve properly if you played out all of its sources. Whereas, with it being an interruptive effect, you would have to activate Dark Knightmon first, because when it would be deleted. So before it's officially deleted, you would play out both sources, and then by the time it is deleted, then it has no sources. So you wouldn't be able to trigger Analog Boy, gain the memory, and hatch the egg, because the Dark Knightmon no longer has any sources, and it doesn't meet the criteria for Analog Boy. This is a smaller errata. This card doesn't see a whole lot of play, but the fact that the card changes its timing completely from a on-deletion timing to a when this would interruptive timing really does affect how this card could be played. And if more support for this card comes out and it sees more play, this is going to be an important card that really should be errated and should be addressed in the future. And it was known before the set officially came out, and I don't believe Bandai has made any statements about it yet. And it's definitely a card that could affect the game state and give one player an unfair advantage if the timing issue comes up, especially with Analog Boy. So I felt like it was important to go over. And last, but certainly not least on our list of errata cards, this is going to be one of the older ones. This is a card that hasn't seen a lot of play recently, but has the potential if more support comes out, and it really does affect how the card could be played in certain situations, is going to be Ancient Garurumon. Now, most people probably won't think too much about this because they're going to go ahead and use the full effect, but I feel like it's still important to mention, and I kind of want to get it out there so maybe Bandai sees this and maybe can make a change to this card in the future. Now, what you may be asking is what part of this card is translated incorrectly. It has nothing to do with the on-deletion effect. That is perfectly fine. It's the when attacking once per turn, you may unsuspend up to 2 of your Digimon with Garurumon in their names or hybrid in their forms. The issue here is the way the card is read in English, it is an optional effect. You can decide not to unsuspend it. So like if you're trying to play around Trump Sword, you would decide, I don't want to unsuspend my guys. The unfortunate part is you wouldn't be able to do that. The card is a mandatory effect. It should be read as when attacking once per turn, unsuspend up to 2 of your Digimon with Garurumon in their names or hybrid in their forms. It is a mandatory effect to unsuspend the targets if you have applicable targets. As I stated, playing around Trump Sword, you would not be able to physically play around Trump Sword because you would be forced to restand after you have attacked with the Garurumon, and then Trump Sword would be able to delete the Ancient Garurumon or the other unsuspended Digimon that you had to unsuspend. So this is, like I said, it's an older one. It's not something that comes up a lot anymore, but there could be more support in the future, and if this card doesn't get an errata, it could be played around differently, especially with more card effects that come out that have to do with unsuspended versus suspended targets and how you would play around those effects. So older one, but definitely something that probably should be addressed, especially since this card came out in BT4. It's been 5 sets. Please, Bandai, please. I know it's a secret rare and it's not gonna, it's a little bit harder to pull than some of the other ones, but let's get an errata out there so we can have the correct translation. Alright everyone, and that is it for the erratas that I have for you today. I know some of these are definitely more impactful for a lot of newer players or people who are going to be playing at pre-release or at high level events than some of the older ones. The BT8 ones, almost all of those, aside from maybe Yukio, you're going to see, or Yukio I should say, you're going to see in higher level events because a lot of those decks and a lot of those cards involved are popular. So I felt like it was important to go over those. Some of the older cards are just to bring up to really shed some light on some of these effects so that you know how they're supposed to work, and maybe they're addressed in the future. Maybe you guys can send your own inquiries to Bandai, see if they can maybe adjust those erratas. You know, I know some of the there's a lot of people who have bugged them, but some of them still haven't been addressed. Dark Knightmon has been known before the card was released. Ancient Garurumon has been out since BT4 and is yet to be an errata. So a few of these cards definitely should be addressed, but have yet to be. And it's unfortunate, but hopefully here in the future they will be addressed. But that's enough of my rambling. All that being said, I hope you guys did enjoy the video, found it very helpful for you guys, especially going into the BT8 format and with pre-release coming up, so that you know what some of your card effects are going to be and how judges are going to rule some of your card effects. If you guys did enjoy the video, be sure to subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate that. We're getting up there. I think we're getting close to 750 subscribers. We're trying to get to that 1,000. That's the next milestone. Leave a like on the video if you enjoy the content. Ding the bell so you know that when my stuff goes live, and then leave any comments down below. As I said at the start, if there's any more erratas that you think I should mention that you can't just easily find on the errata section of the Digimon website, then be sure to leave them down in the comments below. Maybe they'll make it into a future video when I go over some more possible erratas that might come up for EX02 and in the future. So anyway, guys, thank you again so much for watching the video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Best of luck in your pre-release tomorrow. BT8's finally here, baby. Let's go.